I'm Jennifer. Standing in the bustling convention center, I can still feel the tension from the trade exhibition that just concluded. The air is thick with a mix of relief and anticipation, and I can't help but let my mind drift back to how it all began. A few years ago, I was just a janitor at Crestline Commerce Group in New York. By day, the building was a hive of activity. Elevators buzzed, and the click-clack of high heels on marble floors filled the air. The voices of powerful executives carried an air of confidence born from wealth and influence. But at night, the building transformed. The lights dimmed, casting long shadows in the corridors, and the air smelled of disinfectant and fresh floor wax. I was 32 then, and I had learned to make myself invisible. I wore the standard janitorial uniform, a plain, dark outfit that hid the fact that I had once been a promising student in a finance program. I had debated complex financial models with professors who thought I had a bright future. But life took an unexpected turn when I got pregnant at 24. My degree remained unfinished, and my marriage to my ex-husband, Ryan, couldn't withstand the new reality. I had a daughter, Lily, who was 9 at the time. She was a smart and curious child, always with a book in her hand and numbers scribbled in the margins. On that fateful night, I was pushing my cleaning cart down the corridor, as I did every night. I moved quietly, almost instinctively, knowing that silence was my shield. One hand rested on the bucket, and the other guided the squeaky wheel of the cart away from the wall to avoid drawing attention. I saved the executive offices for last. They were always the quietest, sealed off from the rest of the building by thick doors and an unspoken rule that only authorized personnel could enter. Mr. Henry Thompson's office was at the end of the corridor. His nameplate, a simple, brushed metal piece, reflected the dim overhead light. I swiped my access card and gently opened the door, careful not to make a sound. The office was large and meticulously organized. The faint hum of electronics filled the air, and the smell of wood polish and expensive cologne lingered. I started my work, emptying the trash and wiping the surfaces. Suddenly, I heard a soft sound near the doorway. My heart skipped a beat. "Lily," I whispered sharply. In the stillness, my daughter stood just inside the office, her eyes wide with curiosity. She was wearing her favorite purple leggings and an old, frayed sweater. She had wandered in while I was working. Her gaze was fixed on Mr. Thompson's desk, where a thick folder lay open. Before I could stop her, she took a step closer. "Mom, look," she said quietly. I tried to pull her back, but it was too late. The door opened, and Mr. Thompson stood there. He was tall and imposing, his suit immaculate despite the late hour. "What is going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but cold. My mind went blank, and apologies welled up in my throat. But Lily looked up at him and pointed to the folder. "Did you do this on purpose?" she asked. Mr. Thompson was taken aback. He followed her finger to the document and frowned. Lily continued, "It says 25% here and 75% there. If that's right, you're giving up a lot of control. That doesn't make sense." Mr. Thompson stared at the page for a long time. Then, his expression changed. He realized that it was a deliberately unfavorable profit-sharing clause, a trap set to see if anyone would notice. And no one had, except for my little Lily. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the narrow couch in our small apartment, replaying the scene over and over in my mind. I was convinced that I would lose my job. I worried about how I would tell Lily and how long our savings would last. I even wondered if finishing my degree years ago would have made a difference. The next morning, I dressed in my most professional clothes, a black skirt I had bought on sale years ago and a crisp white blouse. I tied my hair back neatly, my hands shaking slightly. Lily watched me from the kitchen table, chewing her toast in silence. "Am I in trouble, Mom?" she asked. I knelt beside her and said, "No, sweetie. You did nothing wrong." At 8:55 a.m. I stood outside Mr. Thompson's office. The corridor was alive with activity, a stark contrast to the quiet of the night before. At exactly 9 o'clock, the door opened. "Come in," he said. He sat behind his desk, a slim folder open in front of him. "Jennifer," he said, "I know you have an incomplete finance degree. Why didn't you finish?" I was caught off guard. I had expected a reprimand, not this question. "Family circumstances," I replied. "Lily." He nodded and then said, "Last night's document. The clause your daughter noticed. It was a trap. No one in my legal team, my deputy, or the external consultants noticed it. But your daughter did, and she spoke up." He then offered me a temporary position as a junior documentation assistant, with a 3-month probation period. The salary would be triple what I was earning as a janitor, and the hours were from 9 to 6. Fear and hope warred within me. Fear of failing and losing everything again, but hope for a better future. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm willing." The transition to my new role was not easy. I was met with skepticism and whispers from my colleagues. Mrs. Linda Harris, the Director of Human Resources, was a strict and no-nonsense woman in her late 50s. She took me to a small workstation near a noisy printer and said, "This was not a popular decision. People here will be waiting for you to fail. There is zero tolerance for mistakes. You will be watched closely." I started my first assignment, an archival review of 2 years' worth of contracts. It was a painstaking task, but I was determined to prove myself. I worked long hours, poring over the contracts, and slowly, I began to notice something strange. There were patterns in the vendor discounts that deviated from the standard terms. It wasn't a glaring error, but it was enough to make me suspicious. One Friday, I received my first real paycheck. It was more money than I had earned in years. I could finally replace Lily's worn-out shoes and enroll her in the after-school coding club she had been asking about. But my newfound financial stability was short-lived. I decided to call Ryan to talk about adjusting child support. He answered the phone irritably. "What's wrong? More money problems?" I told him about my new job. He laughed and scoffed, "You? In an office? You don't even have a degree." I tried to explain that things had changed, but he wouldn't listen. "You're still the same person. Don't pretend otherwise," he said and hung up. 2 weeks later, I received a thick, official envelope at work. It was a petition for custody modification from Ryan. The reasons listed were damning: long working hours, instability, and alleged emotional unavailability. There were also insinuations of inappropriate relationships at work and suggestions that I had not earned my position legitimately. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. That same day, Lily came home from her father's place quieter than usual. She told me that a woman from my work, Miss Rachel Stone, had asked her questions about where I worked, what my boss was like, and if I stayed late. I knew then that this was not a coincidence. At work, I could feel the hostility from Miss Stone. Conversations would hush when I approached, and she would watch me with a smug expression. I was more afraid of losing Lily than my job. I isolated myself, stopped reaching out to friends, and barely slept or ate. Every phone call made me flinch. Then, one morning, Mr. Thompson stopped by my desk and said, "Linda will loop you in." An hour later, Mrs. Harris called me into her office. "Your responsibilities are expanding. Unofficially, you're assisting with an internal audit of procurement," she said. I started cross-referencing procurement contracts against internal benchmarks. At first, the discrepancies were small, but as I delved deeper, I discovered that all the irregular contracts were approved by Mr. Mark Davis, the Vice President of Procurement. The vendor companies seemed legitimate on paper, but their ownership structures were suspicious. By Friday evening, I had assembled a working file of all my findings. I saved it to my secured project folder and backed it up twice. But on Monday morning, the folder was gone. My desktop was clean, and there was no trace of my weeks of work. Mr. Davis appeared, holding a printed email. He was furious. You accessed restricted procurement data and copied sensitive files. An anonymous report says you were going to sell them to a competitor, he shouted. I was shocked and tried to explain that my files had been deleted, but he wouldn't listen. Just then, Mr. Ethan Reed, a quiet and brilliant IT guy, stepped forward. I can check, he said. He went to my workstation and started typing. After a few minutes, he said, the files weren't copied. They were deleted manually at 2:30 a.m. And the login was from Mr. Davis's office. The color drained from Mr. Davis's face. He tried to deny it, but Ethan also found a call log from his terminal to a rival company's procurement office. Mr. Thompson immediately suspended Mr. Davis. Ethan restored my deleted files, and I felt a wave of vindication, but also a deep sense of fear. I knew that I had exposed powerful people, and they wouldn't let it go easily. Mr. Thompson was concerned about my safety and Lily's. He offered us the use of his mother's house in a quiet town called Maple Grove, an hour outside the city. The house was empty but full of memories. Family photographs lined the hallway, and there was a sense of warmth and history. Lily and I settled into the house. She attended a small local school, and I worked remotely under strict security protocols. One afternoon, Lily discovered the attic. Mom, there are books up here, she called down. I climbed the narrow steps and found a trunk full of journals. They belonged to Mr. Thompson's mother, Mrs. Helen Thompson. As I read the journals, I learned about her life, her struggles raising 2 sons after her husband's death, and the weight of expectations on Mr. Thompson as the elder. Midway through one journal, I found mentions of a younger son, Mr. Charles Thompson. He was restless and impulsive, and there had been a rift in the family. He had either left or been pushed away, and the details were clouded in regret. That evening, I told Mr. Thompson what we had found. He listened silently, his face unreadable. I knew she kept journals, but I never read them, he said. I suspected Charles was alive, I said. He closed his eyes briefly and nodded. The trade exhibition for Crestline Commerce Group was approaching. It was the most important event of the year, and there was no room for error. Mrs. Harris called me early one morning and said, "You're coordinating logistics. Everything passes through you." When I arrived at the convention center, it was a flurry of activity. Booths were being set up, digital displays were being tested, and security teams were stationed at key entrances. I moved through the chaos with a clipboard and an earpiece, checking names against access lists and verifying shipments. Ryan showed up on the first day, even though he wasn't scheduled. Ms. Stone followed an hour later. I could feel a sense of danger. I signaled Mr. Reed through the earpiece, and he started tracking their movements. There were several attempts to disrupt the main presentation. A delivery request was rerouted, a restricted document packet was misplaced, and a technician claimed unauthorized access to the stage systems. But we managed to neutralize each threat. On the final day of the exhibition, the main hall was packed. Everyone could feel that something was about to happen. Mr. Thompson took the stage for his keynote address. He spoke about the company's growth and commitment to transparency, but then he paused. "I need to address another matter," he said. "For years, we assumed that loyalty and experience were enough. We were wrong." He then introduced Mr. Charles Thompson, who stepped onto the stage. He was broader than his brother, with a relaxed posture and an open, searching look in his eyes. Mr. Charles began to speak. Screens behind him lit up with financial records, transaction histories, and evidence of a long-running scheme orchestrated by Mr. Davis. He named accomplices, including Ryan and Ms. Stone, and described how contracts were manipulated and silence was bought. As he spoke, security moved in. Ryan and Ms. Stone's composure cracked as officers closed in on them. There was no struggle, just the sound of justice being served. After the exhibition, Ryan's custody petition was dismissed. The evidence of his coordination with Ms. Stone and his role in the attempted sabotage undermined his claims. Lily remained with me, and I felt a profound sense of relief. Mr. Thompson called me into his office one morning. "We're establishing a permanent internal audit department, and I want you to lead it," he said. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. The company arranged for me to finish my degree, with tuition covered and flexible scheduling. Maple Grove stopped feeling like a temporary refuge. It became our home. Lily thrived, and our garden grew back slowly. Mr. Reed became an important part of our lives. He was always there when we needed him, and Lily trusted him completely. 2 years have passed since then. I'm standing in my office, reviewing a report that will be presented to the board next week. The department I lead is small but respected. Lily, now 11, is at home, poring over a book and looking for patterns. Her future is bright, and mine is no longer a struggle. I've learned that strength comes from consistency, attention to detail, and the courage to speak up, even when the odds are against you.